Twitter CEO Elon Musk found himself in hot water over the weekend after he suspended and then reinstated the accounts of journalists who reportedly shared information about the location of his private plane. Those journalists included CNN's Donnie O'Sullivan, the New York Times' Ryan Mack, and Keith Olbermann. Musk defended the suspensions on Twitter Spaces and on his timelines over the weekend, writing, quote, "If anyone posted real-time locations and addresses of New York Times reporters, the FBI would be investigating. There'd be hearings on Capitol Hill, and Biden would give speeches about the end of democracy."
Twitter Files journalist Barry Weiss responded to the weekend mayhem, writing, quote, "The old regime at Twitter governed by its own whims and biases, and it sure looks like the new regime has the same problem. I oppose it in both cases. The accounts of journalists Musk suspended have since been reinstated." Joining us now to weigh in is Ellis Hennikin, a writer and journalist. Welcome, Ellis.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
So what was your initial response to all of this Twitter drama over the weekend?
He is no salvation, I will tell you that. I almost feel bad for some of my friends who were just looking at Elon Musk and thinking, oh my God, finally, we're going to get a Twitter we can love. The guy, in just a couple of weeks, has taken an imperfect place and sent a wrecking ball through it. I think the only good news may be that his own poll of Twitter users asking whether he should step down as CEO by a margin of something like 15% say, get out of there, Elon.
You're absolutely right. And it's been hilariously saddening to watch, as somebody who really loves Twitter, watch it basically tank in a matter of weeks. But I wanted to get back to something a little bit. We talk about doxing, especially in the case of Elon Musk. It was the first thing that he claimed. The location of the plane was actually public information. You could follow it on a site. What say you about the legitimacy of the doxing claims and how this has basically shaken down? Was this a matter of personal security? Do you think that he actually had a legitimate case claim here, as he stated on social media?
Well, listen, I don't want to come out in favor of doxing. I mean, there are examples where that can be abusive or threatening to people. But I mean, we are talking about public information. You guys are both too young to remember, but they used to publish this big fat book, and they would deliver to your doorstep, and it had every single person's name and address in it, and their phone number if you wanted to call them in the middle of the night. So listen, I'm a journalist. I'm not going to be in favor of hiding public information. Oh, and by the way, I don't think this really had anything to do with why Elon Musk wanted to suspend all those journalists. He didn't like what they were saying or writing about him.
Right. So, I'm just going to play the devil's advocate here. What people on the right were saying to justify their cheering Musk on for suspending these journalists were two things. The first was that these were the very people who consistently called for the deplatforming of conservatives, and so there was this sort of joyous Schadenfreude at seeing them have to get a taste of what your average normie user gets, right? To have their journalist privilege suspended. I think that, I'm curious what you think about that. To me, that argument has, in terms of enjoying it, I totally see why people enjoy it. But the second thing they would say is this, and I'm curious what you think about this because, I spend much of the weekend debating this in my household and on Twitter. They argued that the information may have been public, but to get that public information to translate into where the plane was, Jack Sweeney, who was the founder of Elon Jet, had to do quite a lot of work on his own. He had to write these algorithms and create bots that could decode information that was meant to be sort of much more private. And so, from one point of view, I think it's clearly in the public interest to know where the richest man on earth is, especially somebody who's involved in environmental causes, where his private jet is, how much fuel it's burning, right? That seems to me very clearly in the public interest. On the other hand, why is that not doxing if you are giving real-time information about somebody's location that, yes, the information is public, but to make it accessible to the average person takes a lot of work that this kid was putting in.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, we all know that as reporters, right? To get public information from the point of view, you got to file a FOIA request, you got to go dig through records, you got to work hard. Sometimes you even have to read a Wikipedia page, which can be very difficult, as you know. Um, but I don't think that's really the fundamental issue. Listen, there are a lot of good and bad things about being a big public figure or being the richest or now maybe the 10th richest man in America. People focus on you. They say stuff about you. They follow you around. They yell at you. To me, while doxing sounds like a really threatening thing, maybe it's like movie stars complaining about publicity. Hey, maybe it just comes with the turf.
I think I agree with you on that. My follow-up would be, we know that and there's evidence to showcase that the Trump era was threatening to journalists, quite frankly, up to and including acts of or promoting acts of violence. When it comes to the Elon Musk issues on Twitter, and there are many, do you feel as though those are also threats to journalists? And what does this mean in terms of a new world order for those who are reporting the news?
Well, I hate whining journalists. I mean, they're almost as bad as whining politicians or whining rich guys. Nobody should sympathize with us. I mean, we have privileged lives. If it's hard for me to do my job, frankly, it's kind of my problem. Honestly, I think the laws as we have them probably work pretty well, which is that you can say nasty stuff about people, you can protest them, you can follow them around, you can yell at them on the sidewalk if you want. But if your behavior goes into violence or threats, you ought to get arrested. And to me, it's not a perfect system. I mean, sometimes it does create places where bad stuff happens to people that we feel sympathetic to, including ourselves. But I don't really know a better system than that.
Something else that came up over the weekend was Jack Sweeney, the college kid who started this Elon Jet account. He went on CNN and the host asked him, well, what would it take for you to stop? Because, of course, he can't do Elon Jet on Twitter anymore, but he's now moved it to other platforms. Well, what would it take? The host asked him, what would it take for you to stop? And he said, my ask has always been the same. Elon Musk offered me $5,000 to stop. And I said to him, I will take $50,000 or a Tesla to stop doing Elon Jet. And a lot of conservatives were calling that extortion. They were saying, look, he has an ability to expose something Elon Musk doesn't want exposed, and he has named a price in order to stop doing that. Isn't there something unseemly about that, Ellis?
Yeah, it's a really stupid answer, right? I mean, it undermines the high-minded philosophical case he was doing such a great job making, right? I would advise him not to give that answer next time. Listen, there's always been, if we want to be really honest about it, there's always been a bit of a thin line between journalism and stalking, right? I mean, it's some of what we do, right? We follow people around who don't want us to, and that can be uncomfortable for those people. But again, you got to come up with some kind of line, some kind of law. And I really think the one we've lived with for a couple of centuries may be the best one, though admittedly imperfect, which is we let people be obnoxious. We stop them just this side of being threatening or violent.
Ellis, you are the best. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm also not smart enough to do that kind of electronic doxing, so I guess we can have opinions about it, right? Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me.